Okay, hey everybody, we are here Thursday night. Welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. I'm here once again with two of our coaches. We got Dustin Dodery, Brad Vanderleit. Welcome, guys, to our Thursday night get together and our little strategy session chat here on the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. And tonight, I thought we'd talk about something very, very cool. And again, I'm really looking forward to getting your guys' insights on this. But tonight, we're going to talk about the technology effect. And I want to see, because you guys have been experiencing this as we headed into COVID, a lot of, when the pandemic first hit, a lot of people had to experience this. And I want to talk about how this impacts, weaponizing on our end, but also just martial arts training and people that were interested in learning to defend themselves and all that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to dive into deep tonight. We'll be back in 60 seconds after the intro, and we're going to talk about the technology effect. Many people understand that they can at any time become the target of a violent criminal assault. These same people know that they have a life, family, and property worth defending. Criminals understand that violence is its own language. Violence is not the sport of competition. Violence is not the art of fighting. Violence is about one thing: destruction. There are those who believe that violence, even in self-defense, is morally wrong. Then there are good people like you who know that defending yourself, family, and others, as well as your property, is not only a personal right, but a duty within a civilized society. Understand, violent assaults are won before they occur. People who learn strategy survive. People who do not will not. For those brave people who believe life is precious and worth defending, welcome to the Education of a Weaponized Man podcast. All right, guys, we are back. And tonight, as I said, we're going to talk about the technology effect here. So before I do anything, let's break down and make sure that everyone's on the same page in terms of what the technology effect is. And I think that the best way for us to really describe that is, I want to start off by, setting up a framework. And I think the best way is to start at the beginning of anybody's journey, which is, what is your ultimate end goal? And, in our world for weaponizing, our start point is the same. And we've referenced this many, many times, but we'll just quickly set it up again. The people that come to us have the goal of learning to protect themselves, their family, and their property from violent criminal assault. That's what the goal starts. Now, some people come to us because they've experienced violence and they are in trauma, some of them. They have been exposed to the vulnerabilities that they now know to be true. Like, it becomes a fact or a reality in their world that there are people in this world that are willing to hurt you. And if you give them half a chance, they will do that, you or your family. Or there are the people that understand that at any point in time, they can become the target of a violent criminal assault or property crime, and they want to be proactive. So the goal is there. Now, from this point, we have to introduce or talk about what is needed to succeed. And we always tell people that there's three ingredients, right? And the three ingredients are pretty simple, but they're information, implementation, and customization. These are the three things that you have to have. And just before I press any further on this, I want to get your guys' feedback on this, because information, implementation, and customization is so important that people understand this, because most people that are looking for some form of a solution to protecting themselves have tried many, many things in the past, right? They have done martial arts, they've done combative sports. I talk about this in my workshop lots, right? But they've done seminars, bought books and CDs and DVDs and all this stuff. And yet at some point, some way, it has failed to give them the end solution that they want. And I just kind of want to get your guys' feedback on that, because we know that whenever somebody's come in or somebody comes to us, even if they've tried other things in the past and it's failed, we often make a point of helping them understand that it wasn't their fault. And the reason I can say it wasn't their fault is because one of these three ingredients, the information, implementation, and customization, was missing. One or more of these ingredients was missing, and that's why we failed. And so I'll use my story, as I often share that as an analogy with that. But I was training, right? Did martial arts. Dustin, you've done martial arts. Did martial arts. And then I did combative sport, and I had, you walk the path, you hit the benchmarks, you reach the crucible goal levels or markers in those journeys. And yet, when I became the victim of violent assault, I got off zero tech, like none of it worked. And I look back on it and say, well, listen, I was training, Dustin, like you were training. I had information. I had, senseis and coaches that were helping me with implementation, and therefore, offering certain customizations along the way. But I want you guys to share your perspectives on those three ingredients, and maybe what you guys have noticed over the years as we've had people come in how those three ingredients, what role they truly play. Like how important is getting, because it's not just information and it's not just implementation and it's not just customization. It's very specific things within those three ingredients. So I don't know if you guys want to just jump in real quick and just talk about how those three ingredients truly impact a person's goal and what your experience has been with those over the past years.
Yeah, I can jump in first, and I'll start just like you did, Greg, with my own experience with martial arts. Obviously the information was there. Now at the time I didn't realize it was very wrong information.
Yeah.
So that was obviously probably the biggest barrier, was I just had the wrong information. I talked about that last podcast where you were kind of interviewing us about our whole journey and stuff. So I won't rehash that, but essentially I absolutely had the wrong information, didn't understand what violence truly was as its own language. But beyond that, it's like, as far as implementation goes, I mean, it was there, but it was there in the, show up Monday and Wednesday at 7 p.m. till 8:30 and then go home. And that was the implementation. It's like, okay, well, yeah, you need that. You need a time to train. You need potentially people to train with or whatever, but that's all it kind of was. And then for me, I think my experience, customization, and again, I was only ever in group class. I was never into like private training and sparring partner type situations like you, Greg, but there was no customization. And if anything, that would be the exact opposite of what you got. It was like if you strayed off the path of the discipline, the tradition, the history, the loyalty, all of that, well, that was seen as a total negative. So I think that's a major, major problem with a lot of traditional martial arts, especially. I haven't personally done, combative sports, so I can't say the same with firsthand knowledge, but yeah, that's just my experience. I have more to add with the other stuff, but
yeah. Well, jump in. I just want to clarify too, because when we talk the three ingredients, right, for weaponizing: information, implementation, and customization, the key thing with the information, and I just wanted you to share your perspective and your words first, but it was the same as mine. There was information being fed to me, and it wasn't wrong information, but it totally was wrong information. And why I say that and why the duality is because the information only became wrong because the goal that I was chasing. I 100%. I joined martial arts like you joined martial. I mean, I guess you're young enough that sometimes you join and it's literally because you're looking for a hobby or your parents put you into something or whatever it is. But I joined because I wanted to learn to defend myself, and I wanted to learn to defend myself from like predatory violence or criminal type assault. Even at a young age, I mean, that's what I wanted to defend myself from. And often we'll use the term, I know Brad talked about this when we did the last podcast, but just talking about, again, well, I wanted to learn how to fight. Well, that was the only term we had. Like we didn't know what else to call it. So we said, I want to learn how to fight. Like all young men are kind of like, you got to learn how to fight. Like, and that one word covers, when you get older someday and you've got a family and somebody's, messing with your family or somebody's threatening to your family, you got to know how to fight, boy. And it's like, I get what they're meaning, but you can't just have information, because the information that I got, none of it was predicated off criminality. And that's one of the things we'll say. You can't learn about criminal predatory violence by studying competition sport or by studying the art of fighting. And when we say the term fighting, we're talking about one-on-one fighting. We're talking about like discipline, like a fight, you know what I mean? Which is what most people equate it to. So it has to be the correct information. Go ahead.
Just quickly add that too, Greg, is that I think it's important to point out for people, especially people who maybe have traditional martial arts backgrounds or sport combatives or still are in it, but are maybe, still investigating other avenues like this. It's important to point out that like, it's not malicious. when
Yeah.
they like the information that we were given. It's not like someone was trying to trick us or deceive us or hide the truth from us. It's just like we've talked about in previous podcasts. It's like
Yeah.
weapon or violence is its own language.
Yeah.
There's just a lack of knowing or understanding what violence is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important because a lot of people,
Huge.
could get very defensive about what they do, what they've done,
Yeah.
and I get that.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to point out, like, no, we're just coming at it from a very different problem and therefore a very different solution.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. The information too, like, and I think it's your point's an excellent point. And I think to just go one step further to just show, like, I don't want, we're not, this is not an attack on anybody's art or what they do. It's the idea that, like, for example, when you talk about training for violence, something that, like, in combative sport as well as the traditional martial arts, having spent years doing both of those, I never got any of, let's say, the pre-contact threats, like pre-contact cues, like what we call the pins. There was no training on how to read the signs of escalation. Like if I said, like, what, you understand an aggression continuum? Do you understand, a predator scale or the predator index? I'd never heard of any of that stuff. And yet that is actually some of the most critical information, because that's the information that actually will allow you to remove yourself before it even becomes a physical threat. That's like, imagine somebody saying, listen, I'm going to teach you to drive, but I'm not going to teach you any of the signs that would help you stay safe out there. I'm just going to teach you how to drive the vehicle. That's the accelerator. This is the steering wheel. Like, but you don't need to know any of the rules of the road. Well, I mean, every day you go out there, you're going to get in an accident. Like, how do you mitigate the risk of being in a violent collision that kills you or other occupants or other people on the road? Like, how you do that is by recognizing driving behavior. Like, you study the rules of the road, and yet none of that pre-context training exists inside of the traditional arts or inside of the combative sport, because they're simply not necessary. And that's what I mean by the correct information. Right. So, so anyway, so there's the correct information. I don't know, Brad, do you have anything you want to add to that, on the information part of it, or all of it?
Yeah, just really quick is, kind of, we talked about having a goal and, like, actually what you're after. Even with your journeys, like, well, this is what, with the information that was out there,
Yeah.
And it's like, that was, again, it was just because of bias as why that was delivered in the fashion it was, because saying that is for violence and is not necessarily for that, right? But, like, I think you can't have one of the three missing. You can't have information, implementation, or customization. One of those, like, if one of those is missing, the whole process and journey is gonna kind of fall apart. But what really comes to my mind is, especially with the implementation, and I think it was you, Dustin, who talked about like group class. And it's like, well, when you have a goal and you want to achieve the goal, for me, I look at the implementation, and the implementation needs to be as effective and efficient to achieve that goal as possible, right? So, especially like you're talking about preparing for violent criminal assault, it's like, well, you don't want to lollygag with that type of process. Like, you want to implement the most streamlined, most effective, time valuable, process you possibly can. So, and it's like, you go back to group class, you show up, like, I remember group classes back in the day, and some of the things that people were going to, that is like, you show up once a week for an hour. And I'm like, and then you miss a week, and then you come back and you're like, well, forgot for one, it was an hour and I forget what it was, and for two, I missed a week. So it's like, it's not the most efficient way to get good at anything in that kind of environment, right? So that's just kind of where my head goes to in terms of the process, and then obviously customization for, when you're growing and expanding and need something specific for where you're at in your journey. Like, it all has to work together.
Yeah, I think too, if we expand out your implementation concept too, like, just so that we're clear on it, right, there's the three ingredients. You need the correct information. And then when it comes to implementation, I 100% agree. It's like, there is a diametrically opposed formula for, like, if I'm taking someone through, let's say, like a martial journey, like, even a combative sport, let's say, you join something, you say, well, I'm the beginner. So we begin our beginner classes. and there's a formatted way of ascending through this process, right? That's why everyone understands. If they say what belt you say, I'm the white belt. Everybody understands that a white belt must go through the white belt curriculum, and then you earn to go to your next belt, the yellow or whatever it is. So you learn the basis of this and you progress through that. When you're talking about violence, you have to have the correct information, meaning it has to be based off the study of criminality, right? What are predatory criminals doing? And that's, they have the bad guy blueprint. They have the blueprints that they use. And you have to understand this and study that. So the correct information. Then when it comes to the implementation, there's the reversal. When it comes to violence, it sounds funny, but you don't start at the white belt. You don't start with the white belt information and then progress through the journey of the belts over, let's say, 5 to 7 year period, depending how focused you are on your training, how much you're training, and then end up at the black belt type material. For violence and weaponizing, you start at the black belt material. And people often are confused by that. They say, well, how do you take somebody who's had no experience and no training, and maybe they're a little bit older or they're young, whatever it is, how do they start at the black belt information? Because you have to start with the information that solves or that answers one very specific question. And that question is, what is the thing that's going to get you killed the quickest? So our most advanced stuff is also our most beginner stuff. And that's the confusing dichotomy. Right? Like I remember my instructors always used to say, we give people the steak first. Like the sizzle comes later. You know what I mean? Like most people, there's the marketing sizzle. Like, you know what I mean? Like you someday you can get to this. Someday you get to that. Like I remember going to the martial art class and seeing the advanced class, right? You go to the beginner class, seeing the advanced belts in the advanced class. And then even with the advanced class, only the advanced of the advanced. And they got to work with the staff, or they got to work with the sais, or they got to work with the nunchucks, none of which are really functional weapons. But the point was they got to work with the weapons. But that was because they'd spent 4 or 5 years getting good enough to work with the weapons. But it's like in self-defense in a modern world where you got a guy who, let's say, has a mobility issue on his one arm and can't lift his shoulder a certain height, or he has to walk with a cane. That guy, day one, will start learning about knife defense and how to use an edge weapon to as an equalizer. He'll start learning how to use tack pens. He'll start learning how to gouge eyes and bite. Like he'll start learning what quote unquote is the black belt advanced level stuff right away. So that idea of you need the correct information, but you also have to make sure that there is guided implementation, and that implementation is again in alignment with that correct information, which is in alignment with the goal. So that was a great point to make, that like you can't just show up once a week for an hour, even if you made every week, and go, okay, well, I guess I start the journey here at white belt and I learn how to stand, I learn how to tie my belt. You know what I mean? Like it's not expedient. But if the end goal is not actually preserving your life, because it doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be effective first. We always say function first, form later. And yet there's people that are conditioned to believe that you cannot have function without form, which is 100% untrue. And that's proven every single day, because there's literally thousands of people around the world that protect themselves from deadly, violent, criminal interactions. They've had zero training, and yet they successfully defend themselves. So it is possible. And people say, well, great, well, then nobody needs any training. It's possible because they had a certain mindset. They had certain things. They took an action. Now, many people, it helps if you are weaponized or trained to take those actions. And it's not form first. None of those actions are form first. They're function first, which is why we're always strategy, tactics, tools, not the other way around, right?
Yeah, just to throw a real world example on top of what you just said, Greg, and this is kind of an unfortunate one, but look at terrorism. You take a terrorist, how are they operating? They're 100% function first.
Yeah.
They're not getting 10 to 15 years of Navy SEAL-esque training in order to carry out a terror mission.
Yeah.
Right? Like they get very, very little training, just told what to do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes it's highly, highly effective, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's about destruction, and that's again, if your whole mission is to you could take a 10-year-old kid, and if your goal was just to have them destroy, whether that's destroy structures, infrastructure, if that's to destroy human life, if that like whatever it is, a 10-year-old kid with the conviction to take action can do a devastating amount of destruction before that person stopped, and that's what's always interesting, right? Stopping the individual is often not hard. It's being there at the right, having someone that has the skill sets and has the willingness and the skill set to stop that person. That's what makes it difficult. You know what I mean? So again, you had a 10-year. I have videotape of over in the UK of a 10 or 11-year-old boy carrying two 15-inch butcher knives, one in each hand, and I have video of him slaughtering 5 people before anybody even looked at him twice. People just couldn't even get their brain around that a kid could do this. And it was horrific, violent acts. Like it was an absolute atrocity. And the kid stopped himself. He just dropped the knives after. He could have easily got another 10, 15 people. So you have a 10-year-old child that could wipe out 10 full-grown adults, 15 full-grown adults in the span of a few seconds. You know what I mean? Like it's not skill, it's not size, it's not talent. But yet the people that were around that couldn't even process that. And why? Because they had not studied the criminality. They had, again, they didn't have a blueprint for a violent atrocity, much less than a violent atrocity committed by and put in the blank, because that's what it is. It's a question mark. Is it a child? Is it a man? Is it a woman? What's their appearance? What do they look like? You know, because everybody has a blueprint of what a bad guy or what a terrorist would look like. And if the person committing these atrocities don't look like they expect, that causes delay, it causes a mental stall, it causes hesitation. And in that hesitation, the bad guys cause more destruction, which is all they're ever after, is destruction. So I don't want to go too far off on this, but it was important that we understand that you need correct information. You need the right type of implementation. It has to be, you know, the tools you live and die by first, which by most standards is the black belt-esque type material first. Then you tune up and fine tune. So function first, form second. As you have time, you go through that. And then of course the personalized customization, because we're all unique individuals, and regardless of your age or capability or any of those other factors, a true self-preservation or self-protection, whatever you want to call it, system, strategies, tactics, and tools are adaptable to almost every single person. I mean, clearly there are physical, mental, and emotional limitations that, you know, of course, but you don't have to be the 20-something-year-old, 6'8", rippling muscles like that. That's just a paradigm for a different goal, right? You know, so if we have these 3 things, the correct information, guided functional implementation, personal customization, then where I'm driving to tonight, what I really want to talk about is the technology effect. Then I want to introduce people to 3 more concepts, because this is what has changed. In the past, there was 3 barriers. So there's the 3 ingredients. There was 3 barriers to people getting what we just talked about. How do you get the correct information? How do you get that personalized, guided, functional implementation? And then how do you get that customization? Well, the 3 barriers were time, right? It took time. You had to be willing to sacrifice and dedicate a tremendous amount of time. The second was money, and the third was effort. And you can put them in whatever order you want. That wasn't, you know, that's just the 3 ingredients. And I just want people to understand, and again, we always come from a place of owning the problem. Anybody right now that might be listening to this that is either involved in learning to defend themselves or has always had an interest, and I really would like to learn to defend myself and my family, but that's what I want to do. I want to learn to defend. I don't want to sport fight. I don't care about the belts and stuff. I just want to know that I have the mindset and the skills, the strategies, tactics to protect my family and my property. Okay, so time, money, and effort, those barriers are the thing that are preventing you from taking action, or at least one of the things. And so let's just talk real quickly about that. Let's talk about the time barrier. And I'm going to go back, because for me, clearly the time barrier was massive because the only people that were doing this, I had to travel 3,000 kilometers to do. I mean, they were teaching the U.S. Navy SEALs at the time. They weren't even teaching publicly when I was fortunate enough to connect with them through a whole other story. But I had to sacrifice a lot of time because it wasn't just jumping in my car and driving to the corner store, to the corner McDojo. I drove down there many times. It was a 5-hour drive. I drove down there. You buy plane tickets, which back in the day, that almost always included a layover. It's hours in the plane, hours in the airport. I've slept many nights in an airport, all of this type of stuff. And there's a tremendous amount of time, you missing a lot of things. And as you get older and you have a family, like you have work, like you have to miss time at work and all this type of stuff. So I want you guys to talk about a little bit of any experiences or insights that you've seen over the years where time has been a barrier for, because we've seen many people. We've seen many people come in and the demand on their time has cost them their training career, like has cost them the pursuit of the skills. So what do you guys want to say about the time barrier?
Yeah, I think that,
but
with the time, like there's kind of two aspects of it. Like what you said too, it's like it's the time to get to where you're going and to put in and invest in that journey. There's a time when you're actually working that journey, when you're actually in there and involved, and that's it still kind of ties in part of it. But it's like, it's all priorities because we all only have 24 hours in a day, and if it's not high on your priority, something that you actually want, it's like it's so easy not to do something that isn't high on your priority list because it's I don't have the time. I'd really like to do this. I don't have the time, but it's like, it's something has to drop off because we have such. That's why I say it's the most valuable asset that we have is the gift of time. But you're right. Like it's one of those things that if it's not extremely important to you, it's the first thing you drop off because of time. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. But what makes it inconvenient though? Like, because again, listen, you can have somebody that has the best of intentions, right? They're just like, I love this shit. Like, I need this. I want this skill. And yet they have a family, right? And so they want the skill. They genuinely want the result of being able to protect their family. But when you have a family, why is it so hard? Because it's like, I really, really want this. Is it literally just that, oh, you didn't want it bad enough, so you didn't make it, you didn't dedicate the time to it? Or is there more to that? Like what happens to most adults when they start? Yeah, exactly. We call it the life factors, right?
Yeah.
But what are those factors? Like I really want to agitate this problem for a lot of people because I don't have to agitate it. I want to spotlight it because this is what's preventing. You know how many good people we've talked to that are genuinely interested, that want to protect their family, and yet they don't take the action. And I know why. It's because one of these three barriers is blocking them. And right now we're talking about time, but what is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it can be what both of you guys touched on. It can be the physical time, the time it takes to travel, whether it's super far like you had to, Greg, or whether it is time to just go to a more local training place, whether it's an organized thing or with somebody else, a training partner. Even if it's a half an hour, it's still a half hour on each end. There's still the time of BSing before, there's time BSing after. You know what I mean? Like all that time adds up. So I think,
and what's that time away from? See, what I'm trying to drive you guys to is understanding that for all of us, when I talk about the time barrier, the biggest thing is this: you got to have the passion, you got to make a priority. And if you do, you'll find time and stuff, right? But the reason, to me, my experience, the reason it's such a big barrier is because what you just said, you both have touched on it, but it's imagine that like time is, again, it's a commodity, it's a currency. And when you'd say, oh, I'm going to class, and class is only a 20-minute drive, but in the winter, you got to warm your car up, you got to drive there. Class is only, an hour, it's 20 minutes away, but you got to get there early. So you're leaving 30 minutes early. All of that we can talk about when people go, yeah. That's just the semantics. Those are the logistics. Where is that time coming from? It's not money. If I have a wallet and I have $20,000 in my wallet and somebody says, okay, yeah, the class is going to cost you $1,000. But the time before is going to cost you an extra $500. No problem. Because I have money here. And when this runs out, it gets reloaded because I work and I do all this stuff. Time is taken from other people. Time is taken from your family. You have a wife and you say, oh, where are you going tonight? Oh, I'm going to class tonight. But that's an hour class or a 45-minute class, plus the half an hour on the front end, plus the half an hour on the back end, plus this, plus that. You know what I mean? That's coming from time with your kids. That's coming from time of your relationship. That's coming from time away from your family. Brad talked about how you're there one week and you miss the next week. Why would somebody miss the next week? Is it because they're lazy? No. Some people, right? But no, those people never last. Those aren't the people we're talking about. It's because somewhere in your week, you stayed an extra hour late at work on the Monday. Classes on Thursday. But that time, that hour, you didn't get to help your kid with their school project. You didn't get to help them, they wanted you to go on a bike ride with them on the Monday night. Time is coming from somewhere else. And that we are, especially in today's day and age, our time is in a deficit constantly. Our time is not our own. And I've heard how many people say this to me. My time's not my own right now. It's just not a great time. Because people are, when it comes to time, often, they're in overdraft. Or they're bankrupt. You know what I mean? And life's not going to get any easier. By the time you have the time, you're already looking, now you're spending your time looking for the retirement home. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to change for most people. And so they have to figure something out. So people have to figure out how to get over that time hurdle. And Brad alluded to one of the solutions is you have to prioritize it. Because you say, well, I go there and this, yes, I have to take some time away from family, but it makes me I'm investing that time in me, and I come back mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally stronger. So people have to see how you get past the time barrier is they have to see it as an investment, but it has to be very strategic in my mind. It's like financial planning. Like you literally have to plan your time and understand that it's an investment, and on an investment, you can get a return if you're smart about it. But I just want people to understand that for a lot of people listening to this, the time barrier is very, very real. It was very difficult for me. I had to invest heavily with my time, which meant I missed out on a tremendous amount of stuff, but I was heavily invested in getting a significant return. I knew what the return was that I wanted, so I made that sacrifice. But I also I started it when I was not married, when I did not have kids. So I could afford to invest more of my time in that. Okay, remember, this is going to drive to the technology benefit because I'm going to solve all these problems for you at the end.
I can feel it.
It's building, boys, like a volcano.
On the cusp of the big reveal.
On the cusp of the big reveal. I'm leading people there instead of just telling people, right? But yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and just very quickly, right? But money's the same type of thing, right? Like, and for a lot of people, this is the easiest barrier to overcome because money's a renewable resource. If you want to do this and this costs this much, you either have that money in disposable income or not, or you find it. You make sacrifices, you say, or you work harder and you generate money. But money's a renewable resource and we can generate money, and money's never really the issue. It's only the temporary thing, right? And then we solve it. I know that because I started this when I was young. I had a massive need and I did not have the money to match my need. But I had the passion that made me resourceful, and so I found the money to match my need, my wants, my passions. So money's obviously an effect. And I think that's a little bit more straightforward for people. And then let's just hit the last one real quick, and that's effort. And effort is worth talking about a little bit because it ties into time. But what do you guys see as one of the greatest, why is effort such a big hurdle for people to get over?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think on first glance, people would directly relate it to time and be like, well, that's where all the effort is. But if you actually get down to the actual doing, the learning part of everything, the effort comes down to well, what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I spend my time? I've set aside the time. I've got the money. Yeah. What do I do?
Yes.
That's where I think people hit the biggest roadblock. Even 100%. If they've been shown what to do,
yep.
They still need someone to show them what to do in that moment.
100%.
Right?
100%. And I'll just throw this in there maybe before, Brad, you jump in on it, but I remember you just nailed it perfectly, Dustin, the fact that effort is the guided implementation, right? You know what I mean? We need the correct information, but the guided implementation, the functional implementation, but it's exactly what you said. When I would go down for training, I had to leave. I would go down there and try and stay as long as I could, sacrifice as much time investment, spend every last penny that I had, and I would stay as long as I possibly could till the money ran out. And then I'd have to come back. And when I came back, there was no internet. There was no, easy communication like we have with our phones. There was no DMing and texting and all this shit. Not like this, right? And I had to put in this effort. And it's hard because even though I just left and I had notes and I had all this stuff, and in a lot of cases I had video, not the video we have today, but I had video, I had to come back and I had to put the effort in to figure out what to do, even though I knew, like, Paul, I remember my instructor used to tell me this. He used to say, people often doubt what comes from them. So someone could say to you, here, do this, do this, do this. Now go home and practice this. And you get home and go, well, he said to do this and this, but am I missing something? Then you'd start practicing and go, this doesn't feel right. This felt better down there. I must be making a mistake. I don't want to invest my time and spend the next 3 months practicing this the wrong way. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to implement. Implementation is where most people falter. And for everything you just said, it's we have self-doubt. When we don't know, we don't know. And so that causes us to not work the process. Plus, there's the common human trait. We want to be ahead of where we're at. We want to be further along. We don't want to just work the process, have the patience. So I find that effort, we're met with frustration, trial and error, failure, try again, fail again. Those ingredients breed self-doubt, they breed uncertainty, which causes people to quit because it affects our motivation, because our expectation is, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm struggling with this, I don't have any feedback directly, all of those things. And so that's where the effort barrier really takes people out of commission. And again, why the correct information with guided implementation is the solution to these barriers. And that's what I'm hopefully with the image we're trying to create for people. Because again, I'll put this in there. Anybody that's listening to this, whether you're taking something or not, if you're training in something, but you feel like, yes, I'm learning things, yes, it's good, but something's missing. One of these ingredients is either not right, missing altogether. Right? They have to be there. Correct information, guided implementation, and the personal customization. So, I don't know, Brad, do you want to throw anything in on the effort part of it?
Yeah, you know what? I do. It's I want to use an example real quick that talks about the effort because, let's look at the fitness industry. Let's look at personal training. Let's look at those sorts of things. When we talk about information, there's a ton of information out there on exercise and all that sort of thing that the majority of people, it's right there. Like that's all you need. You don't need anything more than what you can really get online. Yeah. But why do people go get personal trainers?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not like that personal trainer for the most part. Like now there's different levels, obviously, but that personal trainer is not doing a lot of miraculous things for the majority of the people that have personal trainers. They're running through a program that is just that you could get off the internet, really, because people have a hard time implementing, right? Because of the effort that it takes. So that's where they get a little bit of accountability is going to help me with this. So I hire a personal trainer to do it, right? So this is something that kind of popped in my head in terms of like just a correlation between that industry, right? And why it makes sense.
I'll throw one more quick example on top of that is, I mean, look at something like medicine, becoming a doctor. If all you needed was information, you'd just go to med school and you'd be done and graduate. Yeah. But what does every single doctor have to do? They have to do the internship. What the hell is it called?
The practicum.
Yeah, it's
the residency.
2 years of residency, right? They have to do that. Why? Mentorship.
Yeah.
Well, why mentorship? Because it's guided implementation.
Yeah.
This is how you put to use all the knowledge you just spent 4 years getting in school.
Yeah.
Right. So it's in many industries. It's just exactly what Brad said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, and I think we can sum that part of it up with the guided implementation, like you said, in the term of doctors, is not just them showing, okay, here's how we functionally apply it. Like, they're giving suggestions. Here's smarter ways to get the same effect, or here's how you take this theory, and here's how we functionalize this for you. That's true, but at the same token, this is what Brad had mentioned. The accountability becomes one of the biggest components of this. A personal trainer is really just paying attention to the client and they're helping them to be accountable. And again, someone comes in and says, listen, my goal is to become fitter. Why would you like to become fitter? Well, I have grandkids now and I want to be able to be active and play with my grandkids and stuff. Okay. Well, listen, if I could help you with that goal, do you feel that if I was to check on you daily and make sure that you were working on the plan that we put into place and keeping you accountable to that plan, do you think that would help you achieve your goal? And of course, the answer is going to be what? Yes, I think that would be. Is if you're checking him every day and asking me this, yeah, it would have good. Now, do you think that if, as I'm checking on you every single day and making sure that you understand the nutrition and you understand all of the information and how to do the exercise, all that simple stuff, would that, and then answering any questions that you might have, would that help you reach your goal? Yes, 100%. Like, it's a no-brainer when you just change the angle and go, yes. The implementation, remember, isn't information. It's somebody paying attention to us that gives us the certainty to actually take the actions that are laid out for us right here, and it gives us that accountability, right? And that's the huge thing with these barriers. So if we look at the correct information, guided implementation, personal customization, and then you say, okay, well, what are the barriers? Well, there's time, there's money, and there's effort. And we've talked about those three things. Now's where we're going to hit the big reveal because, and we had to do it this way because if you don't understand that that's the barriers that I faced, and what I'm about to say and what I'm about to reveal through the technology effect did not exist. And that's crazy to think about. It didn't exist. In 1994, late 94, early 95, when I started this journey, it didn't exist. This was not even possible. And so the technology effect has solved those three barriers in a way that people just couldn't even imagine was going to be possible. And how it did is, I'm going to give you three more things. This is the technology effect solution. Training has to be looked at now in three different lights. It has to be looked at in terms of what we call on-demand training. The second is what we call remote or virtual training. And the third is the live training experience. And those three things now are absolutely essential in any program, in any art. I don't care what art you're doing, even combative sport, makes no difference. These three tools are now absolutely mandatory if anybody is to really offer the most well-rounded training experience possible, which in turn means the most expedient path to achieving whatever your goal is. If your goal is to become, the heavyweight champion of the world, or to become and that's in mixed martial arts, whatever it is, these on-demand, remote, and live training experience are all going to be part of the matrix that makes up that training experience. You can alter those numbers to different degrees based off the situation, but all three are absolutely levers that you pull to leverage the greatest result. And just real quickly, again, I can go off more on that, but let's just break it down so people really understand what I'm talking about. So the first lever is the on-demand training experience. And so what do I mean by on-demand? We call them protocols, but on-demand is training that has been, or protocols, we call them protocols, taking the correct information and having it formulated into a very specific scientific, functional implementation process where you have tracking sheets and we take our information and we've broken into, let's say, 30-minute workouts, 30-minute training sessions. But they're recorded. So that now it's like you have this virtual university that is literally on demand. So now people can say, oh, well, I'm day one. I've never done anything. Day one, week one. What's the first thing I should do? And there can be a 20-minute lecture there. And that lecture is like, here's what you need to know. It's the same lecture that you would give to somebody who was sitting right in front of you, who just came to your class and said, listen, this is the first thing you need to know. And then they're like, okay, I didn't. Now what's the second thing? What's the third? And you can carry them on this on-demand journey. Now, on-demand meaning what? It's literally on demand, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year. It's on demand. So when we look at the barriers of time, money and effort. Oh, I was going to go to class tonight. It was at 7:00, but then the kids needed help with their homework and this and this. Now it's 10:00 at night. The kids are finally in bed. I finally have me time. Fuck, I missed my training. You just go over, log in, and on demand, and there is a protocol. Not an instructional video, not a video teaching a bunch of techniques that then you have to try to figure out for yourself. An on-demand training experience that is guiding you like real time. You do it along with the instructor. You get your private, you get your on-demand private training. Now, the first one of the on-demand, I'm going to pitch this to you guys because I explained it, but we have, of course, prior to the pandemic, we were doing this. And when the pandemic hit, we turned our attention, right? The three different things, on demand, like virtual, and then you have the live training. We had to adjust the matrix. And so the on-demand training became a bigger part. We upped that. What has been your guys' experience with the on-demand training?
Oh, it's golden. I mean, I sent this in a message to you, and when we first really cranked that up, when COVID first hit, I sent a message, something like, it's just about, I've been doing this for a very long time, 20 plus years. And I've always done training on my own at my own house. But again, there was always that hesitation, or you never felt like you were getting a lot of juice out of the squeeze compared to when you showed up to class or to private training with another guy or whatever.
Yep.
And so just having that guided journey, that here's what we're doing. You're doing it with someone. The coach is in the room. You're getting pointers as it's coming at you. I mean, it just turbocharged it. And so the amount that even after 20 plus years, the amount of training I was doing at home was amplified by massive amounts, just because we upped that accessibility to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, just real quick, Brad, when you jump in too, because Brad, you can answer this too, and Dustin, you can circle back to it. But what did it do to the time barrier? Like, what did it do to the effort barrier? Like, how did it impact the three barriers, right? Mostly, the time and the effort barrier, because those are the biggest ones. But how did that change that? Because Dustin, we've talked about that. Like, for example, Wednesday nights and stuff. Are you training more? Are you training less? Is it more convenient? Is it inconvenient? Like, either one of you, but talk to that part of it.
Well, I'll jump in on that, because right when we changed the dial and we kind of really started putting the on-demand training and stuff like that in the forefront, because of the situation that we're in, my daughter was just reached like a few months old.
Yep.
So to have that situation where it's like, well, I have this new aspect of my life that we're talking about time as being a currency, and I'm just like, okay, like, so what's happening is like, okay, well, we're going to work these protocols. I'm like, okay, where are we doing that? In your basement. Really? Okay, perfect. So it's like, so she's sleeping, my wife might be sleeping, so I come downstairs, just work a protocol.
Yeah.
That's way easier for me right now.
Yeah.
And that's just because that's where my situation evolved when this really started to kind of change for how we used it.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, right? When it's convenient for you, you walk to your basement or wherever you want, whatever you can do it in your living room, and you hit play. Yeah. You log in and you hit play. And just so people are clear, like, because a lot of people have never experienced like real-time on-demand training. Like, I teach the lesson the same way I teach my private students for the past 30 years. I teach it, but I do it with the camera. So I do it with you in your list. So you're literally following along, and I'm coaching as we're going through this, right?
Do you remember Mac's comment when we first started doing this a lot more? Mac's comment was, he's like, he had to adjust mentally, because initially he was like, yeah, I keep talking to you, Greg.
Yeah.
Like as if it was
live. Yeah.
Like a Zoom call. He's like, he thinks you're there talking. He's like trying to talk to you. He's like, oh, fuck, it's recorded. Like, he can't hear me.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show how good it works.
Yeah.
Because it literally feels like the person is live with you.
Yeah.
They're not in the room with you. It doesn't matter.
No.
It feels live.
Yeah, sure. Because I also, like, it's taught that way. It's taught like we're there having a one-on-one private one-on-one conversation. But of course you have the power to pause, to rewind, to fast forward. Like, whatever you need to do, you can relive the experience. But you go down, you hit play, and at 30 minutes is over, or even if it was 15 minutes into it and something came up, pause. And then you come back, play. You know what I mean? Like, the freedom, like, and this will be my last point on this, but for the on-demand, how much has that allowed, like how much investment has that given back to you in terms of your time and your effort? You know what I mean? Like you can go downstairs in 30 minutes, you can be in your own world, really dedicated and passionate to what you're doing. And the second you hit end, you're home. You're right back engaged with your kids. You're right there for your wife. You're right there helping kids with homework or getting ready for the next day. And yet you've put in your dedicated training for that day. And people might go, 30 minutes. Most group classes that they would drive to are 45 minutes. They might say, oh no, it's an hour. Yeah, an hour after your 15 to 20 minute warm up and stand around and talking. There's so much filler and lost time that, 30 minutes of pure focused, driven, goal orientated training is infinitely better.
Well, and also it's maybe that 1 hour once a week or 1 hour twice a week.
Yeah.
This can be 30 minutes every single day.
Every single day. 100%.
So it might be 30 minutes, but now you're doing 3.5 hours a week instead of 1.
Exactly.
Right. And not that you could, you get my point.
Yeah.
Let's tie in what we were talking about effort, right? Mm-hmm. And you kind of touched on this, Dustin, when you're talking about effort, but it's like, how many times you're like, oh, I should probably get a workout and I should probably get train. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So since I don't know what to do, I do nothing. Mm-hmm. But again, if there's a roadmap laid out, it's here's what to do. Yeah. It takes the guesswork out. It's like, okay, like I don't know what I should be doing at home. Well, here's what you should be doing at home.
Yeah.
Easy.
I'll throw one last comment on it is because obviously you still have access to live training, but like I don't live in the same city as you guys. Do you know what I mean? So for me right now, it's a 35-minute drive each way.
Yeah.
I drive in 2 to 3 times a week to train with you guys. Well, that's a lot already, but I want to train more. Yeah. So now I have this on demand in my basement. Now I can train 7 days a week.
Yep.
And only 2 or 3 I have to drive. Yeah. Right. So I mean, it's a massive difference to training tempo.
And look at that, saving you time, saving you effort, and that's what we're talking about, saving you money. I mean, look at gas right now. Gas is $1.65.
You know what I mean? Big truck.
Yeah, it's a big truck, yeah. So the on-demand thing, and again, just because it's been highlighted a bit, but these protocols are laid out in a roadmap. A roadmap, like one protocol might be a 13-week, a 90-day challenge, a program. And then there's another one that is 6 weeks or this. So not only are you on demand and have that, but you're also being directed to say, you start here, follow this map first. Oh, this is done. Now what? Now you move to this map. Now it's like a series of hiking trails, walk here to here. And then when you get here, we're going to move you to here. And it's all on demand, right? So the first one is the on demand. The technology effect has given this gift to us, which is starting to become more popular, right? But most organizations are not doing this. And if they're doing it, they just have a series of instructional tapes where they just show, oh, here's this, and you could do this, and you could do this, you could do this. There's no linear progression. It's not mapped out where these lessons are like private lessons guiding you from zero experience and zero knowledge and literally guiding you through. It's not just teaching you techniques, it's literally teaching you the entire strategy, tactics, and tools, the mindset, the framework is all being laid out. That's almost non-existent in the industry still. So it's very much at the vanguard, but is a massive now, and it'll never change. It is part of it, right? So the on-demand is number one. The second one is the remote or virtual training. And the remote or virtual means it's virtual. It is live, but it is remote. And so, for example, we do a couple times a week. One of them is 100% dedicated virtual, meaning nobody shows up live. There's nobody there live, and we're on, but it is a live coaching class. So I take an hour, call it Greg's Garage. We go virtual. Members from all over the world can log in, and I teach a strategy, a tactic, a concept, answer a question, whatever it is, and we do the training together. And I can see everybody via the camera that wants to be seen, and we go through it, and you can get instantaneous direct feedback. So again, if you have a question, you get your question answered. If there's something that I notice, I can coach that. And we're doing that from anywhere in the world, and yet it has the same benefits of, oh, what time is it? It's 6:30, log in, we're live. Oh, 7:30, class is done, end, and you're right back at home again. But what do you get? You have the on-demand, then all of a sudden you have the remote or the virtual, but it is live. What has been your guys' experience with the remote and the virtual training experience?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that you haven't already said, because you mentioned some of them, is the feedback. It's you're standing there, you're working through it, and then all of a sudden, Greg's voice comes on. Dustin, do this. Like I can see your foot, and your foot's not quite turning over. Like try that, see how that feels. Like it's that live feedback again, which is the same as just doing live training in person.
Yep.
But again, you have all the benefits of being at home, not driving. Da, 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 da.
Yes. And the thing is, it's coaching. People have questions. People are doing something, in some other city that's 15 hours away. And, they're like, well, listen, I don't have the time right now. And, to be there live and do all this stuff. Yet they're getting that direct feed, that fear of like, I don't know what I'm doing. Am I doing this right? And they're very close, right? Because they go, I'm following the protocols and I'm doing this and I think I understand this. And then they just get that live coaching feedback. And I have guys that have, they're doing the protocols and they record themselves for 2 minutes, say, hey, I'm doing this. Can you take a look at this? Is this right? And they send that to me. And then I can say, hey, listen, jump on real quick and we go live. We go into a remote coaching call. And then I say, okay, now here's what I noticed. Do this. Now try this for me. And in 10 minutes, usually 10 minutes or less, they've gotten a live private. They've gotten a remote coaching intensive, and that self-doubt and that problem have been corrected. And then it's like, okay, now practice that for the next little bit. And in a week, I want you to send me another video. And then there's that follow-up and that accountability. But this is happening remote. And I'm doing this with people that are all over Canada, right? Like, and we're not geographically bound anymore. But I hope people understand that the protocols, the on-demand, the recorded, and it's so important that they understand that what really makes that valuable is not just it's a bunch of recorded techniques. It is a linear, progressive, systematic approach to teaching the entire weaponizing process. So it's literally like you are starting to work just like you would. It's the same format that I take all of my private students through and who you guys would coach privately. Here's what it is. And then the remote live or the remote virtual coaching is the ability to get questions answered, live, real-time feedback, coaching, depth of knowledge, like personal customization and more guided implementation. And so hopefully people really understand the power of that. And then the third and final element, which before was the only element, is the live training. And of course, just real quickly speak to what you guys what are the benefits of live training? I think most people understand the benefits of this, but maybe now talking about the contrast. Like, what is there anything that you appreciate more about live training now that you've been exposed to the other two models so much? Or is there some things where you're like, what's so interesting? I never would have guessed it, but I can get this that I used to think could only be done live. I actually get that need met by the other two areas. So can you give me any feedback on that part of it?
I think for me, like where my head goes to is just like synergy.
Yeah.
Like everything else synergizes the live training because you're putting in time, money, effort, everything that it takes to be there, to be live. But it's like, again, it's like I used the example earlier where it's like, well, if you show up once a week, then you miss a week, and that's all you're doing because that's all that there was available to you. And it's like 45-minute class, half-hour class, and then you miss. It's like there's no synergy there. But with the training tempo that is able to implement into people's lives effortlessly at the comfort of their own home, wherever they are in the world, and then it's like obviously depending on where you are in the world, coming live. It depends on how that's structured, but like to come live, it's like you're not just showing up and like, hey, I'm here for live, and then I haven't been doing anything.
Yeah.
I've been building everything that I worked live last time I showed up, and it works for people around the world. They come do a live protocols, and then it's like they go away, work their stuff, and then work everything remotely and on demand, and then come back and do live again. It just keeps building. As opposed to always like, there's always been that like that kind of thing where it's like I always feel like, I take 2 steps forward, and then when I leave, my training always takes 1 step back. So the next time I come live, I take 2 more steps forward, and then I take a step back when I leave. And I think that with everything else, with the on-demand training and the virtual remote coaching, is that you're not taking the step back, right? You're still taking step forwards the whole time. So that when you come back to do live training, whatever program that happens to be, you're constantly moving forward, and you don't feel like you're taking a step back.
Yeah. Yeah, you said it. You said it perfectly, and I'll just throw a couple different words, but are just echoing what you said. But 100%, what you're talking about is momentum. People build momentum, right? And there's a formula. I'm giving everybody formulas of 3 because this just seems to be the magic number and the way formulas work. But you're 100% right. Because we went through the setup to this. I had a very specific goal I needed to reach. I mean, I had a lot of pain with it, and I had to make sure that I understood how to protect myself, my family, so on and so forth. But when I went down there was always, you were where you were. So you went and you trained, you started. And even years into it, every time I go down, I'd start again. Whether I was this level or that level, whatever, you start. You train for 3 days. I would try to stay down there for 2-3 weeks or 2 or 3 months. And you train, you start, and you progress. And then inevitably came the day when I had to come home. And there was always the regress. Start, progress, regress. And even my instructor said, you will start at, let's say you start at 0. You will progress to 2 in your whatever period of time. You will regress to 0.16 because you don't know enough to hold on to anything. But then the next time you come, you'll be at 0.6 or whatever, and then you'll progress and you'll get up to 2 again. And then you'll regress to 0.7. You know what I mean? And over time, your progress and regress will balance a little bit, but there'll always be the regress up until you get to a certain point of autonomy. And what you're talking about, this momentum, is when you can start and say, I start on demand. My first lesson now with most people is, here's the 2-week onboarding process. You start on demand. You can hear the lectures, gain the information. You don't have to waste your time, money, and effort coming here. Get on demand and you regret this. Now, you own that information. That information is there. You can listen to that information 100 times. You can listen and drive it in your car. You can listen to it and watch the videos at home. It's there for you. So you start, you progress, the regress, say, shit, you know what? I don't remember a lot of the stuff. Just rewatch the video the very next day. And you're like, oh yeah. So you start, you progress, the regress is very little. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've been doing this for 3-4 days. He wants to do a check-in, and I have a remote coaching call. So now all of a sudden you get on and you get this live feedback and you make any little corrections. Not only do you not regress, you accelerate forward. And then we have people now that I'll see, and they will do on demand. I prescribe to them what on demand I want them working. We do remote, weekly, sometimes bi-weekly check-in, so remote coaching, so the virtual coaching. And every 4 months or so, 3 to 4 months, we schedule a live when possible, where they show up or I come to them. And what's so interesting is I can go down there, and one of the 2 of the guys I'm thinking of, I can go down there every 4 months, yet we're doing the protocols like the on-demand, and we're doing the remote virtual. And then I can go down there 4 months and spend 5 hours one day. And the amount of information, like the cleanup, the tuning up, the progression that I can do in 5 hours. And they're always like, oh my God, like it'd be great if you just lived here. Imagine having this every day and stuff. But it's like, you do have it every day. And it's like, they're so far and it's like the other day I was making a point and I said, you guys recognize that without the last 3 or 4 months of having the on demand and doing the weekly remotes, the virtual coaching, that had you just waited for me to come down. So I can't wait. I'm so excited. He's going to come down. In this one day, we would have been doing what we did 3 months ago. That's where you'd be. And they're just like, oh shit. And we would have done 1/10 of what we've done. Like not even, like you just cannot. The live is awesome. But now, and my point with wanting to do tonight's podcast on this is that this is the evolution of training. This is the new matrix. Yeah. There was a point in time when Bruce Lee was traveling the world, you know what I mean, and telling people kicking, punching, trapping, and ground fighting. You got to fight in 4 ranges, and the world was laughing at him. Then, 1993, 1994-ish, the world started going, holy shit, there's this thing called jiu-jitsu, and now we got to, and it wasn't until probably 97, 98 where people were like, okay, and then it still wasn't to the early 2000s where people go, okay, you got to be able to stand up and you got to ground fight and you got all this stuff. And it became this, oh yeah. And now you're telling people, you know, no matter where you're at in the world, you can find an on-demand, you can find virtual remote coaching, and you need the live experience. And like I said, you can tweak those numbers. Professional fighters are going to do a tremendous amount of live training because they're one person paying a lot of money to have a full-time team at their disposal. But at the same time, don't think for a second that they haven't done virtual coaching calls with some of the best nutritionists in the world, some of the best doctors and kind of for recovery therapy and all this stuff, and have them issue them protocols, and they're at home. Look at George St. Pierre, follow him on Instagram. Every day he's doing, you know, he's got his exercise, he's doing his pool, he's doing his cold plunges, he's doing track, he's doing all these things, but he's working these things live. He's working these things on his own at home. He's, you know what I mean? It's these different modalities of the training experience. And that's what I wanted to expose people to, is that we are the weaponizing process. And as it was passed down to me, has always been at the vanguard of the training experience. Why? Because results matter. You have to, like, these are people coming to you saying, my life's in danger. You need to get them the result as expediently as possible. This is why this process was used by Navy SEAL teams and elite special forces and stuff, because of that inverted implementation. It's not a start at the white belt, earn your way to the black belt, secret, deadly stuff. It's the exact opposite. From day one, protect your family. Here's the tools you're going to live and die by. Here's the strategies, tactics, and tools you're going to live and die by. So I guess if I just recap real quick, and then you guys can throw in some closing thoughts here, but you need 3 ingredients. You need the correct information, you need the guided implementation, and you need personal customization. The 3 barriers that used to exist to getting those 3 ingredients in the most efficient way possible were time, money, and effort. And the thing that has now changed those barriers, making it possible for more and more people, good people, average people, to weaponize and protect themselves and their family from violence, is the technology effect. On-demand training, systemized, linear progression, on demand, the live remote access to coaching from anywhere in the world to get that live feedback, and then finally the option to have that live training experience, but when it's needed, when it is beneficial, when it will give you the most adrenaline shot to move you forward. Now, again, if you have access to your coach and trainer every day and you can do live, you could be doing live every day. Plus, it all integrates. I'm not trying to espouse one way or the other. I'm kind of referencing mostly people that we're not geographically bound anymore. So a lot of people, they'll go on demand, remote will happen first before the live, because they don't have to fly. They don't have to worry about fucking COVID restrictions. They can start doing it now, today. And that makes you further ahead. But yeah, I mean, of course, there's people that train here that are live is one of the predominant anchors every week. And then, but just like you guys, live is a core anchor. Every week we're together live training, but the on-demand and the virtual is a massive part of your guys' training protocol and prescription. And, you know, again, maybe in your closing comments, give a final synopsis of how that's impacted you and how it's changed your life and the barriers and how it's helped you achieve your goals. But that's what I wanted to share with people, because no matter what, you can take this information and apply it to any goal you have in your life, and just recognize that times have changed. There's a technology effect literally impacting every industry that you can think of in this world. And be on the vanguard, take advantage of it, right? The pandemic taught the world that we can do things remote and virtual.
Yeah, I think honestly, like, one of the best testimonials to on-demand virtual on top of live training is guys like me and Brad.
Yeah.
I mean, Brad moved from Calgary to Edmonton to be closer to live training, years ago. Mm-hmm. We've both been doing live training for over 20 years. We've seen it all. We've done it all. We have access to the source. Yeah. And yet, what do we do every week? Yeah. On-demand training, virtual, remote training, the live coaching online. Do you think we'd waste our time doing that if we didn't think it was helping us? Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it just... Mm-hmm. It's a no-brainer. If we're doing it after that many years and having all the access to the live training we want, clearly there's big benefit in it.
Yeah, 100%. Well said.
Just real quick, just with the advancement of technology, like I know you already said it, Greg, that it's just improving our access to information and training, and removing the barriers to entry. And it's like, it just makes it so much easier and so much more effortless to be able to whatever you want to do, whether that's weaponizing, whether that's anything else that you want to become proficient at. It's like the technology is there that makes it more effective of a process, and that's with time, and actually the time that you're putting in, it makes your tempo change. And it's just one of those things, like it's like we always talk about when on the weaponized process, it's like, what is the most effective way that we could get better to handle violence? It's like, well, technology is just 10x that, because now we have access to implementation and customization, and we don't have to leave our houses, so the technology is a huge asset. And you know what, I think that if people are like, oh no, I like to only do it in person, so you're gonna be left behind. Because like you said, COVID and the current state of where we're at has changed what we believe about learning and working and all that stuff. And it's like, it does, it's legit. It makes it better.
100%. Yeah. Well, to echo that, what you said, like I've had students quit. One guy in particular quit because he just didn't want to do on demand, and he didn't want to do the remote virtual. And those were just paradigm pushbacks of like, oh, I stare at a computer all day long, and I don't want to do that. Like when I come home, I don't want to stare at a computer screen. And it's like, it's not about, but you watch TV. Well, yeah. So you do stare at a computer screen. Like, so it's the paradigm and the pushback that this isn't training. I want the live. But the reality is that even if the person lives right here, it's efficiency of time.
Yeah.
You can come here and you can sit down, and I'll give you that lecture. I'll take 2 hours and I'll give you a 2-hour lecture where we're talking about the physiology and the sympathetic nervous system and all this technobabble that is so critically important for you to understand. And you'll go, that was awesome. I'm so great. I got this live connection. I learned all this information. And the very next day I'll give you a test on it. And you'll remember almost none of it because it's the first time you've heard it. But if you can sit down and compartmentalize and go through that and study that and take notes and rewind and pause and literally saying, over the next 6 months, I want you to watch that at least once every 3 weeks. That's part of your training. That's your homework. I want you to do this protocol. I want you to do this. It's so much more efficient use of our time. And like you just said, Brad, you are literally being left behind.
Yeah.
Like this train is moving, advancement is happening. We are all about getting expedient as quick as possible, functionalizing as quick as possible, doing it, all those things. These are the tools that are available to us, and you would have to be crazy not to use them. So yeah, a lot of people will miss the train, and they'll look 10 years from now, 7 years from now even, and this will be the standard. And people they won't remember a time that it didn't exist. But to get the advantage, you got to get in on the front end. You got to get on the ground floor. And this is why this podcast was so important. And the last thing that I'll say about this too is like, think about it from this last perspective. The what I call the filler or the barriers, as we've referenced them tonight, the time, the money, and the effort that you have to put in, these are the things that are stopping you. But here's a new reframe. Those are the criminal's biggest advantage. There are people right now that like, oh, I've always wanted to do something this. Oh, I know I need shit like this because I am the guy. I'm the sheepdog. I have that in me. I'm going to protect my family, and I believe it. Yeah, you'll fight. You'll try, but you're unweaponized. You don't know what you're doing. You're not efficient, and that is also a criminal advantage. But the reason they have done nothing is because I don't have the time. Right? It's the money thing because you got to pay for all this stuff. And then there's the effort. Those 3 barriers, and the criminals sit back and go, life factor advantage, baby. I live 24/7, 365 days. I'm the criminal lifestyle. Like that's my advantage. Time, it's effortless, man. It's all my time goes into criminal. Money, fuck, I take what I got. I take what I need. And the effort, it's not effort. Like, I'm surrounded, I'm inundated. You living your normal, quote unquote, normal busy life, you're the guy that has no time. You're the guy making excuses, the effort, whatever, because people still think old school. I got to sign up for this. I'm paying for this. I got to get my ass to this. I got the fucking kids. I've got this. I've got the wife and she wants date nights and I got commitments and work, my hour, So those are the criminal advantages. That's what we call the life factor advantages criminals believe they have. And the technology effect, those are not. You can take away the criminal advantage by understanding what we just shared with you tonight. So that was my goal, was to reveal that, just go deep. I talk about that in my workshop, the 1-hour education of a weaponized man, where you discover those 10 insights violent criminals do not want you to know. But I thought I'd take this piece out and we would do a deep dive on it. So hopefully this added value to people. All right, guys, any final words here?
No, not for me.
Once
Perfect.
again, we've blown through our designated time barrier. Not that we really have a time barrier, but I'm trying desperately to keep these things a little bit shorter these days. But
That was the only final comment I was going to make, is because of the beauty of technology and we're all in our own homes right now.
Yeah.
We can easily go over 15, 20 minutes on a podcast. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
We're at home.
Because we just hit end and we all run right back to our lives. We just reintegrate our lives seamlessly.
And right to bed.
Right to yeah, right to bedtime routines, the kids, and then one of those putting myself to bed. Yeah. So, anyways, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everybody for watching. Like, follow, comment, share, so we can reach more good people that desperately need to weaponize so that they can rise regardless in this world. And that's it, everybody. Don't forget, stick around in the exit. I'll give you 4 simple ways that I can help you weaponize for free. I appreciate your guys' time tonight, Dustin, Brad. Thank you guys so much. Everybody, please stay safe, stay weaponized, and we will chat again soon. Hey, thanks so much for listening. And listen, if you found this content valuable, here's 3 different ways that I can help you weaponize for free. First, grab a free copy of my ebook, The Education of a Weaponized Man. To get your free copy today, head to ebook.awakentheprotectar.ca. Number 2, you can take a free workshop where you will discover the 10 insights violent criminals don't want you to know. To take this workshop, head to workshop.awakentheprotectar.ca. The third way is to head to my website and check out all of my Freeline programs that cover everything from mindset to strategies. To check us out, go to awakentheprotectar.ca. And finally, leave a 5-star review so that we can reach more good people like you who are ready to weaponize and rise regardless.